Hey, this is Toby. So in this video I want to start a new project where we use high and lows to create a profitable breakout strategy. Let's go. Okay, so this will be a completely new EA where I show you step by step how to get the highest and the lowest price of the current symbol, and then we will use these levels for a good breakout strategy. Now if we take a look at the chart, we can see we just take a look at the last n bars, we get the highest and the lowest price. And if price now breaks these levels, we take a position. If we break the high level, we will take a buy position. If we break the low level, we will take a sell position. So the main idea is very simple. We will also have a stop loss and take profit in points. And later, we will also add additional filters so we don't trade every high and every low, as you can see here. So let's just wait for a position. Here was a sell position because we broke this low here and we closed in profit. So this is the main idea, very simple, and later we can add additional components to improve the strategy. Okay, so let's jump to meta editor and we start coding. Okay, so here we are in the meta editor. Let's just create a new file. So I will do this under my YouTube folder here, right click, new file, expert advisor template, click on next, and let's name it maybe just high, low, breakout EA. Let's click on next, next, and finish. Okay, so this is our new expert advisor. Let me just clean up a few comments here. Okay, so let's first of all compile here. Of course, you can change the copyright and version stuff if you want, but I will start with the include section. So I will just copy this comment here and I will rename this to include. And here, of course, we want to include the C trade class because we will use a object to open and close the positions. So let's just write include. And now the directory is trade.mqh is the file. And now you should be able to compile. Okay, so let's continue with the inputs of our EA. I will just create another comment section here, call it inputs. And the first input I like to specify is always the magic number. So this will be a static input because we don't need to optimize this input in a stretch tester, for example. So let's just set it to static input and the type is a long variable. Now the name, input magic number, and we predefine this maybe with just a random number. And we also add a comment here, magic number. Okay, the next input is maybe the lot size. So this will also be a static input, this time of type double. And let's name it input lots. Let's set this to a very small lot size here. And let's also add a comment lot size. Okay. Now the next input is maybe for the number of bars. We want to search for a high and low. So this will be an input we want to optimize. So we don't use the static keyword here. So input of type integer. And let's name it input bars. And we set it maybe to 20, I don't know, 20 bars. And also add a comment, bars for high, low. Okay. And now, of course, we also want to add a stop loss and take profit. So input of type integer, because the stop loss and take profit will be in points. Input integer, input stop loss. Maybe the default value is 200 points. And we also add a comment. Stop loss in points, and we also want to have the option to have no stop loss. So 0 for this EA means no stop loss. Okay, now let's also add the take profit. Let's set this take profit to 0 by default. And let's also add a comment. Okay, that's it for the input for now. Later, of course, we can add, if we add additional components, we will also add new inputs, but let's just focus on the main basic logic, and that's all we need for the inputs right now. So let's compile. We have no warnings and errors, and now we can continue with the onInit function. But before we take a look at the onInit, I want to create another comment section here after the inputs, because we need to declare a few global variables, because these variables are used in multiple functions. So the first one is of type double, called high. So this will be our high level. And by default, or at the start, we set it to 0. And the next one is also type double, and of course it's called low. We also set this to 0. Now what I like to do is to save the current tick in a variable. So I just have information about the price, the time available at any time. So let's just declare two variables of mql tick type. The first one is called current tick, and the second one is called previous tick, because we need two of these variables to detect if we cross a line, for example. And the last global variable will be an instance of the ctrade class here. We already included the file. So now we can just type ctrade, and let's call this object trade. Okay, let's compile. So that's it for the global variables right now. But before we take a look at the onInit, I just want to show you a quick tip, or it's basically just good practice. So if you have a variable, let's take a look here at this high variable, and you want to clarify what this variable is for, you can just write a comment after the variable. Let's just say highest price of the last n bars. And now if we compile, and if you use this variable somewhere in your code, later you can just type high and you see the comment. Sometimes it takes a while to update, but you can see the comment what this variable is for. So that's pretty handy, I think, and it's also good practice. So let's just add two comments here for these two global variables here. Okay, let's take a look at our init. So here what I always like to do is to check the user input here, because the user can enter stupid values and then we don't want to start our EA. So let's just write a comment here in the onInit function, check for user input, and maybe write the if statements where we check for the inputs in a function, so we can keep the onInit function very short. So I will just write a if statement here. The function will be called check inputs maybe, and this will be a Boolean type function, so it returns true or false. And if it returns false, we just return for the onInit function maybe just init parameters incorrect. Okay, so now we have our check inputs check here in the onInit function, and let's write the function where we check for the inputs here after the onTick. I will just copy this comment section. We will create a new section, call it, let's call it just functions. And let's write our check input function. So as I said, of type Boolean, the name check inputs. of course, has to be the same name like this here. Check input, we have no parameters. And at the end of the function, we want to return true. And let's add some if statements to check for the inputs. So magic number, lot size. Okay, let's start with a magic number. If input magic number is less or equal to 0, then we want to print a message that we have a wrong input. So we can use the alert function for this. And maybe we write wrong input, magic number less or equal to 0. So then the user just knows what is the wrong value. And we also want to return false in this case. So then we return false for this function, and we return parameters incorrect for the onInit, and the EA will not start. Okay, so that's it for the magic number. Let's add a few more of these. So the next one will be for our lot size. So if lots is less or equal to 0, then we also want to print a message. Lot size less or equal to 0. Next one is for the input bars. Maybe this should be created in 1. Let's leave it at 0. So if bars is less or equal to 0, we also return false. Now we only have the stop loss left. Stop loss can be 0, so this means off. So we just want to print a message if stop loss is less than 0, and change the message stop loss less than 0, and of course our input take profit can also be 0. Take profit. Okay, and if none of these if statements here are true, we return true here in the end of this function. Okay, maybe we also write a comment here above the function. So check user input, just to clarify what this function does. Of course, this is very simple and we know what the function is for, but if you have a lot of functions and maybe they are also a little bit more complex, it's also good practice to just describe the function in a few words. Okay, let's compile. And what we also want to do here in the onInit is to set the magic number of our input here to the trade object. Because later we will use this magic number to filter, to look for the positions of our EA, to close positions, for example. So let's just add a comment here in the onInit, set magic number. Yeah, and the function is called so trade dot set expert magic number, and here our input magic number. Okay, let's compile again. I think that's it for the onInit. Now let's take a look at the onDinit. I think for now we don't need the onDinit, or we don't have any code in here, so I will just decrease the size, but I will leave it here because maybe we need it later. So that's the onDinit. Let's take a look at the onTick function. Okay, so here in the onTick function, first of all, we want to save the current tick. So let's just write a comment here, get tick, and we will use before we get the current tick, we will set the current tick to the previous tick. So previous tick equals current tick, and now we can get the current tick with a simple function called symbol info tick, and here our symbol name and our current tick. And if this function call here returns false, we also want to return because there's some kind of error. And let's just print a message for the user. Failed to get current tick. And we want to return. And very important is that you don't forget the exclamation mark here before the symbol info tick function. Okay, let's also compile. And now before we continue here in the onTick function, we need a few more custom functions, and I will copy and paste them from another EA, but you can pause the video and code it for yourself, and I will also explain the functions. So I will just open the RSI EA we coded here on this channel, and I will copy the open positions, count open positions function, normalize price function, and the close positions function. So I will paste them here under the functions section after our check inputs function. Okay, so let's start with the count open positions function. As I said, if you don't have these functions coded already, you can just pause here and code the function for yourself. So here we have two parameters, count by, count sell, as a reference. We set them to 0 at the start. We get the total positions at the current time. And then we just loop through all open positions, get the positions ticket and select the position. And then we check if the selected position has our magic number. And if that's the case, we increase the counters here for buy and sell. So that's all that this function does. So we can check if we have a position open from our EA at the current time for buy and for sell. Okay, next, here the normalize price function. We will use this function to normalize the price for stop loss and take profit. So again, we just have one input here as a reference. We get the tick size of the symbol, and then we normalize the price to the tick size and the digits of the current symbol. Okay, and last function here is the close positions function. I just use this function to close all my positions, and I can specify here with all buy sell. With 0 means we close all positions, 1 means we close all buy positions, and 2 means we close all sell positions. So again, here we get the total number of open positions. We loop through open positions and get a ticket, select the position. Then we check for the magic number, and then depending on the parameter here, all buy sell, we continue with the next position or we close the position right here. And if the operation fails, we also print a message for the user. Okay, so that's it for these three functions here. And now we can continue here in the onTick, and we can use these functions right here. Okay, so now maybe we first of all compile just to make sure that our functions are correct and we don't have an error. And now we can write a comment to count the open positions. Count open positions. And now we can use our function. So first of all, we declare two variables, count by and count sell. And now we can use our function in a if statement here. Count open positions. And we just pass the count by and count sell variable. If this function fails, we just want to return. And in this case, we don't want to print an error message because the error message is already generated inside this function, right? If you take a look, we have different print statements here. So we just return. And okay, now we know if we have a buy position open or a sell position open. Okay, so now we can already check for a buy position. So let's write a comment here, check for buy position. And we can use a simple if statement. And the first condition that needs to be true is, of course, our count by has to be 0. So we don't have a buy position already open at the moment. And our high variable here is not equal to 0. So because at the first tick, we set it to 0 here at the start, and at the first tick, it's of course 0. So we just want to make sure that we have set this high level. And next, now we can use our previous tick dot ask price, because the ask price is relevant for a buy position. So the previous tick ask price, if we take a look at the high level, has to be below this high level. So below our high. and the current tick dot ask price has to be above this level. So this means we have a break of this price level. So current tick ask greater or equal to our high level. And in this case, we want to take a buy position. So for now, let's just add a comment here or a print statement. Open buy position. And we will just use this to test our condition here. Now let's just copy this for the sell position. Check for sell position. This time, of course, our count sell needs to be 0. Our low should not be equal to 0, and previous tick bid is greater our low level here, and the current tick bid is less or equal to our low level. And in this case, we want to open a sell position. And be very careful whenever you copy and paste code like this, because I see a lot of mistakes when I just copy and paste code and you guys forget to edit something here. So copy and paste is very dangerous. So let's compile. And now the next step before we can test our first logic here is to get the current high and low of our current symbol. Okay, so I will just add another comment here. Calculate high, low. And here we will set our high to the, and we will use the high function. So this will just give you the highest price of a specific candle. And we will specify our symbol, the current period. And now we need the shift or the index of the bar we want to look at. And for this, we will use another function called highest. And here again, we need to specify the symbol, the period, and the mode. So mode high. And this will just compare all the highs of each bar. And then we will get back the index of the highest high. And also we need to specify the count. So we want to look at the last n bars. So this will be specified by our input. And we want to start at bar 0. Let's close these two functions here. So with the highest, we get a index. You can also take a look here to help. For the return value, the index of the highest value found on a corresponding chart. So this index then will be used in the high function to get the highest price. Now let's also copy this for the low. So low. And now we want to use the low function here. Symbol, period. Again here, lowest. Symbol, period, mode. This time has to be low. And again, input bars and 0. So this will calculate the highest and the lowest price over the last n bars. And now before we test this in the visual tester, I want to add another function to draw these values here on the chart, just with a horizontal line, for example. So let's first of all compile again. And for this, we want to call the function draw objects. And now let's go down and write this function. Here maybe we do this after the check user inputs, check inputs function here. So this will be a void function, so no return value. And let's write the name of the function, draw objects, and we will not have any parameters for this function because the high and low variable is a global variable, so we can access these variables from any function here. Okay, so maybe we start with the high object here. And first of all, we want to delete the object. So we just make sure we have a new object with the current high value on the chart. The name is high, and now we can call the object create function here. Again, the chart ID. Null means the current chart. Our name. And now the type of object we want to draw is a trend line. Now we need to specify the sub window. 0 means the main chart window. And now the first time coordinate. Maybe for this we declare another variable here, type date time, and we calculate the time using the iTime function here for our symbol, our current period, and the shift, we will use our input bars. So this will just give us the open time of this bar here. We store this time in our time variable, and now we can use it here. Second coordinate here for the first point is our high price, of course. For the second time coordinate, we can use the time current function and again our high price. So this should create our trend line. And to make it easier to see, maybe we also increase the width. So object set integer null, and now object property width, and we set this to 2. And also we can set the color, set object, set integer, object property color here, and maybe just set this to black. Okay, so this will set, or this will create a simple trend line for the high price, and we will just copy and paste this here. And of course we change this to low, object delete, also the name to low, object trend line, and here again we now use our low variable, and everything else is fine. Okay, I think that's it for the draw object function for now. Let's compile. So we don't have any warnings or errors, and now we can do a first check to see if we detect the high and low prices, and yeah, if we get into here our check for buy position if statement. Okay, so let's just run a visual test here in the strategy tester. I've just selected a symbol, a time frame, our EA of course here, and we will test with every tick, and we will do a visual test. So let's just see if we can see the high and low, and let's just let this play out a little bit, and we should be able to see here some comments. Let's clear them again whenever we cross these lines. So yeah, open buy position, and now open sell position. Let's clear them again, and we can see we detect the highest price over the last n bars and the lowest price over the last n bars. And now in the next step, of course, we would change this print statement here to actually open a position. I think that's it for this part here. We will continue in the next part. So we will add the code to open positions here, and we will also add additional components so we can get a backtest like this one here over the last 10 years with the strategy. And yeah, if you don't want to miss that, make sure to subscribe. If this video was helpful, it would be nice if you just leave a like so you can sleep well tonight, and I will see you in one of the next videos. Bye.